what what kind of tools and platforms can you have to provide the leaders the visibility, I guess, for making sure they understand how effective you've been, not something just like looking at let's say a Salesforce dashboard and said, oh, the deal cycles dropped from 35 days to 30 days, and that's because of me.
Yeah, I mean, and attribution is still hazy, right? It's not 100% binary on this. It's just never 1 or 0. But there's certainly worst case scenarios, and I can give a good example before I kind of talk about the tools and resources that you have available to you. I was when I joined UserZoom, actually, it's the interesting story. When I joined UserZoom, my chief revenue officer, the first thing he said to me is, we've got to fix onboarding. Right, we have to fix onboarding. Now, probably 90% of enablers would have said, okay, let's focus on onboarding, and they would have got it done. But the first thing I actually did was look at our sales velocity levers and said, look, what are our trends? Where do we actually look? What do we actually look like? And what are we really struggling with? And as it turned out, hiring wasn't the biggest priority for the company at that time. The company was scaling, of course, but we weren't doubling the size of our sales force. And there was some methods to onboarding, although they weren't ideal, but they were getting it done. What I actually found was the number of opportunities was gradually trending downwards. And by the time we got to the end of the year, that would be a significant challenge, right? So using the sales velocity sort of metrics and equation, and painting that picture, but also importantly spoke the language, I was able to kind of justify, actually, this is where we need to focus, right? And I actually spent in my first sort of 7 to 10 months at UserZoom, I focused on top of funnel activities, right, when it comes to enablement for that reason. But also using that method, it was pretty easy to get everyone aligned to it because it's a no-brainer. Like, here it is, right? So it's not just about the tools that you use and relying on those tools and platforms to deliver a message, because the tools are just a vehicle to help you get to a destination. The destination is alignment, right? It's to get that seat at the table. So ultimately, one of the things that I was able to do was to prove that the trend line for opportunities was going down. We did something at this point in time, and suddenly the trend line started to go upwards, right? And using that, again, was enablement responsible for that turnaround? Not 100%, but even if I was to take a 10%, that's still worth millions, right? So there's certain things that you can still do, and I typically take the worst case scenario. And I've even used the equation to justify investment, right? Because if you can get people aligned on the same page using the same language, it's easier to get investment, right? And I've even said, look, even if we were to improve sales velocity for each lever by 0.1%, 0.1%, that's an ROI in 3 months, right? I was able to buy solutions in tech using that method. It kind of works, right? So what kind of technology and platforms are out there to support all of this and make this happen? Well, I think there's probably a few. I'll talk about maybe 3 or 4 of those. The first one is just CRM, right? Obviously. A lot of the information you're obtaining comes from CRM ultimately. Salesforce, HubSpot, those kind of things. Make the CRM, or at least the people who manage your CRM, like RevOps or SalesOps, your best buddies, right? Because you'll need them to help you generate the metrics that you need to prove business impact, right? It comes from CRM. But also there's layers on top of that, right? So there's tools like Clari and Kluster and Ebsta, those kind of platforms that help you understand why things are the way they are, right? With the CRM data. So it will help you understand your win rates. It will help you understand your average deal values and the trends and the bottlenecks as well, right? Is that trend appearing across the globe, or is it a certain region? Is it a certain team, or is it a certain collection of individuals? Knowing the answers to those questions helps you understand and drive your strategy, right? Is it a global thing, or is it actually, no, it's just a European thing, right? That helps you to really be laser focused on what you need to do and where you need to do it. But I'd say there's another one, probably a bit of a curveball platform, which doesn't get mentioned enough. Now, one of the things I mentioned is correlation, right? Sales enablement programs and strategy to a middle layer of competencies and behaviors to the sales velocity metrics. The middle layer, so what is that middle layer? What can provide and support that? Well, there's tools out there like competency platforms, right, that help me assess and understand the competency levels of my teams. understand where the benchmarks are, in terms of kind of the ideal state, what the actual state is, and therefore the gap. Right? That helps me understand where do I need to focus on those behaviors and competencies. There's tools out there like E4Enable is one. It's a company headquartered very close to Manchester, actually. So it's a British company. Tools like this can play a critical role in supporting that middle layer because it helps you to correlate between your enablement programs, the actual behavioral change and shift, and the impact to the lagging performance indicators. It actually visualizes that impact for you. So important.
We had Kate on as our first guest, so I'll let her know. Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So Kate, absolutely. So platforms like that will help. So definitely check them out. And finally, I think what I said before, a lot of what I said is very easier said than done, right? Sales Velocity Labs, a company I've founded very recently, have launched the world's first sales velocity simulator, right? That's certainly going to help as well. That's going to help you accelerate everything we've just mentioned. So yeah, do check that out as well.